I feel like one of the main challenges that people within product leaders that I've worked with at every level is that they do default to just trying to be the hero and save the day and solve everybody else's problems and just
Yeah.
answer everybody else's questions. So, what I try to introduce in this course are some kind of basic and essential coaching skills to help them when that happens in that moment when somebody from their team or even a peer comes to them with a question or a problem, to instead of just defaulting and answering it and telling them what to do, to ask them a question, to ask them what they've done already, what have they tried, what are they thinking of doing, to do things like be present in conversations, to take on board different aspects of active listening and actually being in those conversations and helping people figure things out for themselves.
Welcome to the Product Weekend podcast. I'm your host, João Moita, and today we're diving into an exciting conversation about authentic leadership and team dynamics with Kate Leto. Kate is an executive coach, author, and experienced consultant in product management and leadership development. Her work focuses on helping leaders and teams find their most effective and human approach to leadership, fostering growth, connection, and genuine impact in their organizations. In this episode, Kate shares insights on how leaders can bring authenticity into their roles and develop more impactful relationships with their teams. Whether you're a seasoned leader or someone growing into a leadership position, you'll find a lot of valuable takeaways in today's conversation. Before we jump in, please remember to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening, and leave us a review. It only takes a few seconds, and your feedback helps us continue bringing insightful discussions to our community. Now, let's dive into the conversation with Kate. Kate, welcome to the Product Weekend podcast. It's great to have you here and finally have the chance to chat a bit more.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, so today we'll talk about psychological safety in products. We'll dive a bit deeper into emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, and also the potential impacts of coaching. But before we dive into those more specific topics, let's start with something a bit more personal. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
What's a recent weekend that
My
you
recent
really enjoyed?
weekend that I really enjoyed. Oh, you know what? A few weekends ago, my partner and I went to an island off the northern coast of France called Ile de Ré.
Called
And
what? Sorry?
Ile de Ré.
Ile de Ré.
Yeah. And it was at the very end of September, early October. So it was past the tourist season for the most part. And it was right at the end of a very busy month for me, doing a lot of traveling and a lot of different conference appearances and workshops and things like that. In fact, I flew in from a workshop that I did in Stockholm directly to get picked up to go to Ile de Ré. So it was like that direct. But Ile de Ré is lovely. It's this tiny little island, and we were about a 5-minute walk from the beach where we took our dogs who had never been on a beach before. So that was really exciting.
Oh, nice.
And we had some great weather and went to another little town the next day that had an oyster and scallop festival going on. So there was a lot of like energy and sunshine and excitement. Awesome. So I think that was a great weekend. I love being able to get away and go see new places and just kind of change of scene brings a change of perspective for me. And I love it. So I think that was one of my favorite, most recent weekends.
Super cool. Nice. It's also very important to recharge and to enjoy life a little bit. It's very easy to get caught up in so many things to do, conferences to attend.
Yeah.
And yeah, great to hear that you had a good time, especially like off the peak summer season where you still got good weather. That's just perfect.
Yeah, it was, I think we were very lucky. So I'm glad we got to do it. And it was a nice, relaxing weekend, as you say, just recharge and reflect a bit about what just happened, but just take a step back and take a few deep breaths. So it was really nice.
Awesome. Cool. Great to hear. So tell me a little bit about your background for people that don't know you, like how you got into this world of products and also some of your experiences. Obviously, you don't need to give me your full CV,
Yeah.
but one particular thing that I'd like to hear from you is how your understanding of this topic of psychological safety, emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
how did this evolve over your experiences?
Yeah. So I've been in and around product for over 25 years, which is, I think, when the first paper, Amy Edmondson's first paper came out about
Hmm.
psychological safety. Actually, I was out. So I started in product in probably about, oh my gosh, 1996, 97, and survived the very first bubble, internet
Okay.
bubble, way back when, working in a startup, and was pretty excited about that. And after that, I decided to go to safer pastures and went and worked at Yahoo in Silicon Valley to get some more structure and a different understanding of what it meant to work in an organization like that, but how to think about product from their perspective, because they were very customer focused.
Yeah.
I really
Hmm.
enjoyed that. Anyway, Yahoo took me to London in 2006 and
Hmm.
it was supposed to be for 3 months. And I ended up living in London for 16 years. So I did leave Yahoo, but I really enjoyed being in London and having such like proximity to do the traveling, as I just mentioned, which I think is really important
Yeah.
for our minds and our perspectives. So after Yahoo, I went back to a startup and became their head of product and helped them create their product practice and work and introduce agile and work closely with the
Hmm.
development teams and design teams on that. And then after that, in 2011, I left to do my own thing. And it was going to be to start my own startup. But I ended up doing some consulting for VC firms that wanted to bring product into
Hmm.
their portfolio companies and help them from the
Okay.
very beginning on
Interesting.
how to hire product people, how to think about product from the beginning, what it meant to even have the beginnings of a product practice in a brand new organization. And I really liked it. So I just kept doing that. I didn't do my own startup, I just worked on a bunch of others. And then I've worked independently since then. So that's now 13, 14 years. From
Awesome.
there, I went and worked for really big organizations that wanted to learn how to build start or products like startups. So went through the digital transformation phase, early phases, product transformations, tech transformations, culture transformations, all of that great stuff. And probably around 2016, 2017, I started to realize the bulk of the questions I was getting from clients might start out about product strategy or measurement, KPIs or OKRs, but they very soon became more personal in nature. My team's not listening to me. They're not performing at the level I know they can be. What am I doing wrong?
Right.
I don't think I'm going to get this promotion. I don't think my boss likes me. My stakeholders are constantly trying to bring me down. I don't know if I even want to be doing this with my life. So I didn't feel I had the skills to answer those questions. And that's when I
Hmm.
went and started doing some training and coaching, not to become a
What
coach.
training did you do?
I started out doing a program in London and not to become a coach. That wasn't my intention, just to learn some of the skills to bring into my consulting work.
Right.
But then I really enjoyed the program. I really enjoyed the learning. And that's really where I started to think more about and read and learn more about emotional intelligence and leadership, because they gave
Yeah.
us like a 10-page reading list. And one of them was all about leadership. And I'll never forget, like one of the first listings was this case study by Daniel Goleman, who really
Hmm.
popularized emotional intelligence. And it was called Leadership That Gets Results. And it was all about the different styles of leadership that he and his colleagues had uncovered and were focused on, and how the trick to being a great leader wasn't mastering one of them or picking the one that's going to help boost you. It's knowing when and having the ability to shift and change into those different leadership styles depending on the situation.
Right.
Anyway, I still remember that,
Hmm.
obviously. And that's when after that, I started writing and blogging more about what I called product EQ. So,
Hmm.
emotional intelligence and product management, because I started realizing, reading all the blogs that we were having, this was back in 2017, there's so much about roadmaps and OKRs and A/B testing and discovery and all of these really cool things that we need and are part of what we do, but no one was talking about how we did it, and the emotional intelligence side and the leadership side that was so crucial,
Hmm.
that is so crucial to our work. So that's where it all started for me. And I went on to get accredited as an executive coach through a program at Berkeley in the States. And I've really shifted my work through the years from being focused on the consultant to help you bring product and understand the product frameworks and the nuts and bolts of product management to being the coach that helps the people who build the products to create a
Hmm.
culture and to create teams and organizations that have
Awesome.
the human side and all the work they do as well. Psychological safety, I would say I started talking about psychological safety in workshops that I was doing for high about discovery process
Okay.
because I thought
Yeah,
psychological safety was a big part of being able to have a
of
really
course.
successful discovery kind of framework and practice in an organization because
To be able to uncover the opinions and views and knowledge of different people.
yeah, and take risks and feel that it's safe to try these different things. And so I started doing those workshops, I'd say probably about 2015 or 2016. And then I started doing more workshops and more work on helping organizations create high performing teams. And of course, psychological safety is a big part of that. So it's always been a, 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 a thread throughout my work, I'd say over the past
Yeah.
decade. And it comes and goes in conversations and my work in different ways now. I
Hmm.
almost forget about it because I feel like it's just a given. Everybody must know about this
Yeah.
by now, right? And everybody must
Yeah.
be prioritizing it. But
Hmm.
no.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. It's something that we've just more recently, so for the past year or so, dived deeper into and started talking with more and more people, like in the events that we're having. And we see this time and again that people don't get it, and that most teams are actually not psychologically safe. That most teams, like, people are scared. There's a lot of strong feelings of imposter syndrome that you were mentioning, that you were seeing popping up and showing in leaders in different companies. That's very present still. And what I feel is that not a lot of people have the vocabulary or the tools or the language to discuss these topics and to address them. So that's really where we're trying to help, is bringing these topics in a easy way to digest, especially for product people, because there's actually not so much specifically for product people the psychological safety approach. Who are some, this is actually a question I asked at the end, but actually I think it fits here. What are some of your references in this space in terms of people that have blogs or books or
Mm.
newsletters, or even just leaders that you think are particularly inspiring and strong in creating these psychologically safe spaces?
Gosh, that's a good question. And I don't know if I know the original kind of books and texts from Amy Edmondson, but I don't know if I really follow anyone in particular that I think is really
Hmm.
strong in focusing on psychological safety and creating safe cultures. I don't know if I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have just the last episode, we had Tom is the founder of a community focused on psychological safety, but it's more general. It's not focused on product or product
Yeah.
teams. But yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things going on. I've been seeing more and more focus of even product management communities talking about mental health and
Mhm.
challenges, which are obviously not synonyms, but are obviously connected, like psychological safety, emotional intelligence also has an impact in mental health and in some other issues also.
Yeah, if you're working in or part of a psychologically safe team or culture, then you're more comfortable having conversations around your mental health or the
Hmm.
emotional intelligence that you feel is there or not there and the different aspects of it, or even a lot of conversations about just bringing yourself to work and being authentic
Yeah.
and handling a lot of the biases that we all see and live with as well. If you have that kind of, so I wonder if what we see sometimes in our blogospheres and on LinkedIn and such is not specifically conversations around psychological safety using those words, but around all the different things that are coming from that. So if I feel safe to take a risk, right? I feel safe to say I'm not feeling good today. I'm having a challenge with depression, or
Mm.
maybe I don't feel like I'm safe in this space because I don't come from the same background as a lot of the other people
Yeah.
in the organization. So maybe it's more that it's less of the theoretical and more of the practical application that we.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And what would be your, now diving a bit more into the emotional intelligence aspect, which is something you've worked very intensely on, let's say.
Yeah.
How would you define it? How would you define this emotional intelligence?
I think emotional intelligence is having this ability to know ourselves well and to being able to manage our own emotions and understand our own emotions and using that in a way to be able to influence and interact with others. So there's two components to it. I think a lot of times with emotional intelligence, it's very much like we think it's all about us and how we respond and what's going on with us and how we can manage our own feelings and our own emotions and our own behaviors. But I think it's also that interaction part,
Yeah.
how we can use that to help others or to influence others and to help other people make progress themselves. So I think there's
Mhm.
two sides to it. And I think it
So
has a lot of different components to it. There's self-awareness and there's dealing with conflict and having challenging conversations, and leadership itself, I think, is an aspect of self-awareness. So there's all these different areas of emotional intelligence that I don't know.
Mhm.
I think we think about, but we don't know that they're all possibly connected.
Yeah, it's also not sure if it's a challenge. Maybe it is the fact that there's all these different definitions and sub like buckets of things. Like it reminds a bit the challenge of like product organization versus agile versus
Mm.
like all these different things. There are different definitions and they don't necessarily, so it creates a lot of confusion when people stay just on the high level.
Yeah.
That if you're just on the high level, seems like these are different concepts that don't connect so well.
Mm.
But definitely emotional intelligence is a key part of psychological safety, or psychological safety is a consequence of emotionally intelligent people in the workplace.
Perhaps, yeah. Perhaps that's the connection. Psychological safety is a byproduct of people who are emotionally intelligent, because one of the
Mhm.
big key components of emotional intelligence, I think, is self-awareness. And that's, again, knowing yourself, but knowing how you impact the world and how others see you. So I think if you and I've been asked many times what's the biggest skill for product managers, and I do think it's self-awareness. It's just having
Mm,
that ability. And I think if you bring that to your teams, that really does help create this kind of
yeah.
foundation for psychological safety.
Yeah, it's also definitely like in the way that we're thinking about it, there's one part which is the understanding your we're calling it notice, which is essentially with two parts. One of them is self knowledge and the other is communicating your strengths and your boundaries, and like
Mhm.
how you let others know how you work and how you can be most productive, and having this mutual understanding within the team of each other's, yeah, strengths, weaknesses, ways of working, etc. But maybe let's dive a little bit on this part, on the self knowledge, on this self awareness, emotional regulation part.
Mm.
In your coaching, in your work with other people, what are some specific exercises, assessments, things that you can do with people? First of all, to understand where you are in
Mm.
this understanding of yourself, in your self knowledge,
Yeah.
and also some things that they can do to improve it.
Yeah. I don't really do a lot of actual assessments. Like, I don't have
Hmm.
surveys or quizzes,
Yeah.
or you can find them online if you're interested. But
Hmm.
usually what I do, so in coaching, I think coaching is like the most amazing exercise in self-awareness, because it's basically giving someone the time and space to talk about what's going on for them,
Yeah.
be it related to work or in other areas of their life. And so you get a glimpse into how self aware someone is from those conversations. What I encourage my clients to do also is outside of our sessions is to do a lot of journaling and write things down
Right.
and we often work on different behaviors and different challenges they might be having, different stories that might be swimming around in their minds and how that's impacting the work that they're doing every day. And so I often ask them to track, to keep a journal of,
Hmm.
let's say you feel like, or they might feel like there's someone at work or their boss doesn't like them because they've
Mm-hmm.
canceled their one-on-one 3 times in a row, something like that. And one of the big questions that I often ask is what evidence do you have besides them canceling your one-on-ones? It's an exercise of keeping track of, like, where do you really see this evidence? Where is this really coming up? And I always encourage people to write it down, because when they're taking time to actually stop and write things down, the brain is working in a different way and you're a
Yeah.
bit more calm, because it's your thoughts to your hand, to your paper. There's a different kind of process happening. In order to build the self awareness, it's challenging our thoughts and it's keeping track of when we're feeling them, when that trigger is happening, how that makes us
Mm-hmm.
feel in terms of our emotions, but also in our body. Do you feel it somewhere? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your chest? Is it in your breathing patterns? What
Mm-hmm.
might it be? And to keep track of it, to be a bit disciplined about it. And then we bring that
Yeah.
back into our coaching conversations and can go further. But I think to build self awareness, a lot of it's just starting by writing down what's going on with you, especially in
Yeah.
those moments that you feel under pressure, under stress, or feel like you're having some kind of reaction to something that you're not comfortable with, and to start noting that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome advice. Like this keeping track, and also it's very actionable, and actually anyone can start doing it right away and
Yeah.
see if they can learn something new from that.
Yeah. I actually have on my one area of my website, I have a tracking spreadsheet that people, just a
Oh,
template.
awesome.
I'll
Oh,
give you the link that you can send people
we'll
to,
link it for sure.
because it's in a gated section right now. But it's just, no matter what the behavior is that you feel that you want to change, the first step is to start to becoming more aware of it. When is it
Hmm.
happening? What's the trigger? How are you feeling? How are you responding? What helps you ground yourself after it comes and goes? And what do you want to do differently next time? So it's just like keeping track of those and starting to identify some patterns and having conversations
Mm,
around that, be it with a coach, a professional coach, or a peer coach, or whoever it might be.
awesome. Yeah, that's very interesting, and having it like in that structured format that helps you, like you said, like that you're prompted to think and to identify specific things that can be really helpful. Awesome to hear. Cool. And do you think this, like, how is it important for individual contributor product managers and to product management leaders? I assume it's important for anyone in these professional settings, but how do you see the differences of the importance of this self knowledge?
Self not Yeah, it's important at all levels. I think it becomes, and the younger we are, the earlier we are in our career that we start to learn about it, the better off we all will be.
Yeah.
But I think it's also one of those skills that is essential to this concept of leadership that we all talk about quite a bit. Because I think in our individual contributor days, we're often focused on learning the nuts and bolts of whatever it might be, product or tech or design, and
Mhm.
learning the different frameworks and learning what it means to start working with other people, which is where that kind of concept of self awareness becomes perhaps challenged for the first time. But I think then as you make that critical movement from individual contributor to leader, if you want to do that, then it's a different skill set completely in leadership, because
Right.
I think you're more engage on a personal level, versus it's not just about the nuts and bolts. It's not just about getting the framework right or knowing all the frameworks or hitting the numbers all the time. It's about how you're going to do it. It's about having resilience. It's about being able to communicate. It's about being able to motivate other people and dealing with those challenging conversations and giving and receiving feedback. And feedback at that leadership level, it's different because it's often more personal, right?
Yeah.
So I think, if ideally, if I were creating the perfect like bot of self-awareness, you'd
Mhm.
start learning about it early on, even at school and childhood, and that can grow with you. But at work, definitely as in your first roles in the working world, you're going to start interacting with people in ways that you haven't before. And that's your first opportunity to start to learn about yourself and to start to build self-awareness. But then ideally at a leadership level, so then you would be ready to go, be ready to learn more. But I do find a lot of times, especially in the last couple of years, a lot of individual contributors are getting promoted very quickly without a lot of, perhaps they've been like rock stars as ICs and as PMs. And so they've got those battlefield promotions, and they may not have had an opportunity to really mature and understand themselves and others around them and how things might work from that more human skills side. When it comes to a lot of the people that I've been working with in the last couple of years have just gotten that promotion, that first leadership promotion, and they're just a bit starstruck and not quite
Yeah.
sure where to begin. And the whole idea of self-awareness being part of being a great leader is something that they think sounds great, but not quite sure how to approach that and how to bring that in. So there's the idealized version, and then there's the where we are today.
Mhm.
The good thing is, I really feel, since one of the very first blogs I wrote about emotional intelligence back in probably in 2017, something like that, was about self awareness. And I was so nervous to write it because I didn't think anybody would take me seriously in the product
Okay.
world.
Why did you think that? Did you feel like people would believe that's like a fluffy topic that's not relevant for product work? Let's just take a quick break. I know it may sound fluffy and not really relevant, but if you're enjoying today's conversation and gaining insights, please considering following our show and leaving a rating. Now, let's hear Kate's perspective on this question.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So if you look back on my website to that very first self awareness article, I put a lot of facts and figures in there to try to show the connection between being self aware and organizations having really good results and teams
Mhm.
being high performing teams. So I tried to create that connection so people couldn't say it's just all fluffy. And
Mhm.
that article was actually really well received and was included
Cool.
in a book about, or the best agile articles of the year and things like that. It does, but I still think a lot of times it is considered that soft and fluffy talk. And my
Mhm.
work as an executive coach is sometimes still considered not the primary thing that companies should be investing in, because it's more the human side versus I got to figure out this OKR stuff. And if you could just help us get that in, then that would be great, right? So yeah, that's an ongoing challenge, but more and more people are talking about it now, which is really good.
Yeah. And do you still do a bit of a tangent here, but do you still do some product specific work, or it's more on this? Okay. But you still get some companies or people trying to get you into that product work,
Oh
and you have
yeah,
to.
I've been,
Mhm.
even by some of my coaching clients, I've been offered jobs, product
Mhm.
jobs in their
Yeah.
organization. So I'm like, but
Okay.
don't you know what we've been doing?
Yeah. Were you not here?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you make the case for it? Do you think it's the case that the impact of this more, let's say, deeper and also inner work only pays out in the long run, and people don't see the benefits of it? Do you think that's why people don't take it so seriously, or do you think it's there's maybe people, I don't know, taking advantage of it and not delivering real value? What do you think are the key things that make people distrust or not value this type of work?
Distrust or not value. Well, I think some people who might control the budgets want to get
Hmm.
things done. So they're really just not interested in that side of the conversation or in that side of their people. But like I said, I feel like that conversation is changing. I feel like there's a lot more going on these days and a lot more people talking around about the importance of the human skills of self-awareness, of resilience, and being great leaders and what that's all about. So I do feel like it's starting to turn, but there are still many leaders out there and budget controllers out there who just don't see it as something worthwhile to invest in because they just got to get stuff done, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Then what's your pitch or your arguments to convince them that they should actually think about it and
So,
it has a real
to be
impact
honest, it's not something that I feel I can always convince people otherwise. It's something they're going to figure out on their own at some point.
through
So,
going through the pain.
yeah, so I there's other there so they're just not my target is what I've realized, and that's okay because there's others who are.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, at some point, I've had a few times where they do come back around. It might take a year or 2 years, and they might have had a challenging time, or their teams might be having challenging times. And often, what I've seen is that it's the team themselves that bring it up, that make it clear that
Hmm.
this is what they feel they need, and bring it
Yeah.
to that kind of leader's attention. But it takes
Okay.
time. I know from my own self work that I can't control what other people are feeling or their behaviors or their actions. So there are some of those leaders I am not going to convince,
Mm.
but that's for them to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah. But then the challenge, and this was more of a provocation for you to share, but the challenge with that, or the challenge, the consequence of that is that these leaders will still create psychologically unsafe teams and environments, which will lead more people potentially to bad situations where they're not
Mm,
fulfilled, they can't have an impact, they get these strong feelings of imposter syndrome, they don't contribute to something.
mhm,
And yeah, so that's a bit of our what we're trying to do with
mhm,
talking about this topic in more and more
mhm.
settings.
So, how do you
But it's
guys handle
definitely
that then? When
so that's why I invited you. Was I was hoping that you could have the silver bullet.
no, I don't
No,
think
but
there is one.
no, definitely not. But the way I think about it is to try to connect it to actual business outcomes that
Hmm.
are more the language that these makers have. So the impact it has on turnover, on
Hmm.
the also the speed of onboarding, like when things are clear, when people have the space to contribute, they can onboard faster and start delivering value faster and reducing that cost of onboarding, let's say. Also the facts and figures around burnout for PMs, it's very scary also. Like
Hmm.
there are couple different surveys that have been done in the past couple of years that show that a huge percentage of product people feel these symptoms of burnout, and a lot of that is caused by not being empowered, not having the space to have an impact and to being shut and from being shut down. So yeah, trying to and this then leads to the turnover, and then
Hmm.
the innovation piece, which
Yep.
comes a lot from the research from Google, that the psychological safety being the number one predictor of team success,
Hmm.
and that's the most innovative teams are psychologically safe spaces where people can take risks and challenge each other. So
Yep.
that's another angle where people see the value. And when they are
Yeah.
like in these innovation efforts, they see that there's a need to create this space for people to speak up. But yeah, but again, it doesn't resonate with everyone.
Yeah.
And
It's what it feels like with your approach, which is completely fair and completely accurate, especially in a way, from a business
mm,
approach and from a sales perspective, trying to
hmm.
lay out the pros and the cons and what you could get out of it. And as you said, the business outcome side of it. It
Hmm.
feels like the same thing that I did with self awareness in that first article that I wrote, where I was trying
Hmm.
to constantly say it's not the fluffy stuff because you get all
Yeah.
of this ROI out of it. And which is cool. It's a good thing to lead with. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I
Hmm.
guess my experience the last few years working with folks within the corporate space is the numbers and that kind of connection isn't always going to play. because in their
Yeah,
minds, they want to just get things done.
exactly.
I think the innovation argument, though, is probably the strongest one that I've seen. And that if you have these safe environments that people can speak up and they feel comfortable and safe doing that, that's going to help to create a culture of innovation. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely it is. Another angle which I think it's very powerful on the personal level is through stories and through storytelling. And there are these stories that most of us have had working in product that it's very easy for other people to relate with. Like one that I usually talk about was working in this startup where there was the founder telling everything that we needed to do, and I had
Mhm.
the development team and all these strong feelings of being powerless at the same time needing having to show confidence and not being able to speak up and to influence what we were actually doing
Mm,
led to eventually creating a product that was useless in the end.
mm,
And that's a story that I guess a lot of people can relate to, but there are many others like this. So then connecting on this, tapping into the emotions of people and to the moments where they felt like they were powerless or that they couldn't have an impact, it rings a bell. Oh, wait. So you're telling me if we had psychological safety in that moment, it would have been better. And
mm.
yeah, also through that, through those stories, I think it has a lot of power because, again, looking at the numbers, like most people have felt these unsafe environments and have felt burned out even because of these structures in place. But then let's dive a little bit more into coaching and your
Mhm,
practice and how it influences. Because also we've been working on this topic. We've organized recently the Leaders Retreat, which I mentioned to you in the past.
mhm,
But essentially, it's creating this space for leaders coming from different companies to get together and to share the challenges that they are facing and their in their leadership, and figuring out a way forward in how they can create better, more productive environments in their teams and grow as leaders as well. And one thing that was really mind blowing for me was having these participants joining, like people with several years of experience in leadership positions in product, and sharing that the space and the psychological safety we created within that group in just a couple of days
mhm.
was something that they never thought would be possible in a work environment or in a professional environment. So this tells me that a lot of these people have never experienced like these psychologically safe spaces where
Mhm.
they can open up, be themselves, and lead. So getting these people together, I think it's also a very powerful way to make them realize that they can do things differently
Yeah.
and be vulnerable as well. What are some of the ways that you've helped or that you're helping leaders become better leaders and also create more psychologically safe spaces in their
Yeah.
teams?
As long as the engagement goes, to help them unpack their challenges and their opportunities and work on whatever they want to work on to become the leader that they want to be. I also offer a short course that's 6 weeks long, and it's
Okay.
teaching leaders about coaching skills, because I feel like one of the main challenges that people within product leaders that I've worked with at every level is that they do default to just trying to be the hero and save the day and solve everybody else's problems and just
Yeah.
answer everybody else's questions and basically be more of that kind of directive leader that just, you've got a question, you've got a problem, come to me, I'll solve it for you and tell you what to do. So what I try to introduce in this course are some kind of basic and essential coaching skills to help them when that happens, in that moment when somebody from their team or even a peer comes to them with a question or a problem, to instead of just defaulting and answering it and telling them what to do, to ask them a question, to ask them what they've done already, what have they tried, what are they thinking of doing, to do things like be present in conversations, to take on board different aspects of active listening, and actually being in those conversations and helping people figure things out for themselves. So that's part of
Right.
a coaching course. It's not a certified course, it's just
Hmm.
helping leaders understand how to bring coaching skills into their everyday management practices.
Awesome. Cool.
Um, and then I also, from that, the very first time I did that course was just over a year ago. And one of the things that we all noticed, everybody in the course and myself, was that there was this great desire to actually just have space to talk about their problems and to do that with somebody who gets it. To do that with another product leader. Because within our course, we spend a lot of time practicing these coaching skills. So there's a lot of pair coaching where they're trying out these different skills that we talk about and teach. And yeah, and at the end of every session, I always ask the question, what are you taking with you from today? And there is always a few responses of, it's just so nice to have somebody to talk to about my problem, who's listening to me, letting me talk about what I need to talk about, but gets it. So
Hmm.
from that, I've decided to create a group coaching program for product leaders, where it is basically we're doing that. We're creating space for a small group of product leaders to come together on every month to focus on topics that they want to talk about. So I facilitate the conversation, but it's their time and their space and talking about whatever it might be, from difficult conversations they need to have with members of their team or difficult conversations with their boss, to talking about the jobs themselves. Do they really want to be doing these jobs? Is there other things in life to look at? What are their values? Are they bringing that into work? How could they create these environments to have psychologically safe teams and organizations? So, yeah, so this is a new offering.
Awesome.
This is something new that it's
Is it
just,
a like a closed program or in cohort based, or is it like ongoing? It's
it's so what I'm starting out with
direct.
a 6-month program,
Okay.
and it's a closed group. So it'll be 8 to 10 people at the most. And we'll meet once a month for an hour and 45 minutes. And the topic will be, I'll facilitate the topic and facilitate the conversation. And it's just a chance for everybody to learn from each other. So I think that's another nice thing about coaching in these small groups, is getting people together who have similar experiences and can advise and provide support to and give some guidance to each other. So it's creating that space of an opportunity for community that I don't think we always get when we're at work, especially when you're in that leadership role and feel like you're the one that's supposed to know it all, right? The idea is to have
Exactly.
this group of people that you can come to with the challenges and questions and frustrations and excitement about new things as well, and continue the
Awesome.
conversation in WhatsApp and Slack groups and things like that outside of the sessions. But that's the initial
Awesome.
idea.
That's awesome. That's very that's also what led us to create this leaders retreat, was hearing this feedback from product leaders that were joining as speakers to our
Mhm.
events, and they were saying like, this space is amazing, being able to share on a deeper level. I wish there was something for leaders to share among leaders on this level of depth, and that's actually something interesting that we managed to create in this in-person event. But I think
Yeah.
the continuity and the fact that it runs throughout time and it's not just an isolated moment can have a very positive impact. So if people want to know more about it, where can they find it? I think it can be very relevant for people that couldn't make it for our retreat, or even people that attended and want to have something else with a new group.
Yes, so they can come to my website and just go to the contact me form, and
Hmm.
they can send me a note that they'd like more information. I'm not doing a sign up sheet because I want to
Hmm.
talk to people
Right.
before we form the group. So I'm
Of
asking people
course.
to
Yeah.
contact me. I'll give you an email address at that as well that we can put in the show
Awesome.
notes, perhaps, that people can contact me directly, because
For
I'm
sure.
curating the group. I want to make sure that we have a good group of people together.
No, that's very important. It's key also for people to be at least in the same mindset of
Yeah.
sharing and contributing. But if they have like similar experiences, it obviously makes it much easier to share and understand each other on a deeper level.
Yeah, it's
So that's all.
interesting. I found that Like the industry doesn't matter. And even the size, the maturity of the organization isn't
Hmm.
a big factor, but it is that mindset. So and I find that's really hard to get from a sign up form. So that's why I want to have conversations with folks. And so far, the people that have joined, I think, have that great mindset. And some of them are people I've worked with in the past in one on one coaching, and they're continuing on it in group coaching. Yeah. Hopefully, we'll start in
Awesome.
January, and it'll be a nice way to kickstart 2025 for folks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. I hope if leaders that are listening find that interesting, they will probably find you
Yes, I
and
hope
try
so.
to get in.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great to hear. All right. So we are at time to wrap up. We could keep going for hours, but not today. So I think we can wrap up today. Just one thing you mentioned in the beginning, that you had all these reading lists and books that you've been diving into around these topics. What are maybe 2 or 3 top recommendations that you suggest people check out besides Amy Edmondson, The Fearless
Yeah. Yeah.
Organization?
So
That's
are we?
one
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah. Are we
is
talking
already checked.
about anything?
Anything around this emotional intelligence or psychological safety or leadership?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I wish I could open my Kindle to look and see what I've been uh, remind myself what I've been reading. Oh, okay. One of them is the go-to that I've mentioned in my newsletter just recently is called The Art of Possibility. And it's written by Benjamin and Rosamund Zander. And
Hmm.
it's all about realizing that we have so much possibility around us. And while there are times when we feel stuck and that we have no options, but if we think outside our frame of reference just a
Hmm.
little bit, you can realize there's all these different things that we can do with our lives and at work. So, in the talk that I gave at Product at Heart in Hamburg about our self narratives, I mentioned it and some of the tools that they talk about as a way to help you
Awesome.
create like a vision for what you want to be and the change you want to bring to the world and how to start putting that into action. It's an awesome book. And I also recommend, if you like audiobooks, to listen to it because Benjamin
Mm.
Zander is the music director and conductor at the Boston Philharmonic. And so he's
Oh,
woven this amazing kind of classical music soundtrack into the audiobook. So I
okay.
highly recommend that one. I read a lot of coaching books because I love what I do. So I'm trying to think of some of the different, and they're all on my Kindle versus sitting
Or
right in front of me.
maybe
Um,
what would be like for someone that has never done coaching and wants
mhm.
to dive into it and understand what it's
Yeah,
all about and how they can start applying some of these things?
I would start with the coaching habit.
The coaching habits.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a good one. Also, I have this one right next to me, the coach's case book.
Okay.
The
That's
first,
more like specific tools.
yeah, it goes through. So it was written by the woman who founded that first coaching program that I took in London years
Okay.
ago. And she goes through different scenarios of her coaching practice, different conversations, like actual coaching sessions, and talks about
Hmm.
different tools that she uses and also refers to sessions that she has with her own supervisor because coaches often work with a supervisor to help them see their own blind spots and help them make sure that their health and their mental health is good as well as we're taking on a lot of these deeper conversations. So she talks about
Hmm.
feedback from her own coach. I feel like that's one of my go-tos, and that's why it's sitting next to me. Yeah, I also have one that I
Cool.
picked up just recently that I haven't read yet. It's The Team That Managed Itself from Christina Woodkey. That's next to my list.
Awesome. Yeah. Also have that one in the list to check
Yes.
out. Yeah. Also, I still need to get Christina here on the podcast to chat about these topics and dive deeper. But maybe I'll try
Yes.
to read a book first.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure she'd like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Kate, thank you so much. It's been great having you here.
Thank you.
And anything else that you'd like to mention, or where can people find you?
They can find me. My website is my name, Kate Leto, Leto.com. can find me on LinkedIn. I do quite a bit of posting on LinkedIn and sharing on LinkedIn. Those are probably the best places to find me. And if you are interested in the group coaching program, please come to the website and you can find my contact me form, or you can send me an email at kate@kateleto.com. Nice and
Awesome.
generic.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. It was great chatting. Thank you
Thank you.
for taking the time.
Yep, my pleasure.
And that wraps up our episode with Kate. I hope you found today's discussion on authentic leadership and human-centered teams as inspiring as I did. Kate shared some fantastic strategies for developing trust, openness, and impact within your team, which are valuable for any leader looking to create meaningful connections. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us and share it with someone who might benefit from Kate's insights. Your support is what keeps us going and helps us bring more valuable content to you. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's topic, so connect with us on LinkedIn or send us an email at team@theproductweekend.com. Until next time, keep leading with authenticity and making a positive impact in your teams.